Welcome to Hashtag with Nabuguzi Kiwanuka. This is the place where we help you unravel social constructs, discuss self-development in line with mental health, and everything in between that directly or indirectly affects us in the millennial world around us. If you're hearing my voice for the first time and are the kind of person who is not scared of being a better version of yourself, even if it requires you to contradict who you were 24 hours ago, consider this your virtual home. I am your host, Nabuguzi Kiwanuka, a lawyer, founder, team lead of Equate Foundation, an addict and lover of insightful conversations, and a professional unraveler of social constructs. Suicide is a lot more prevalent in this age, and the World Health Organization captures the magnitude of this challenge when it cites that in every 40 seconds, someone dies by suicide. On this episode, Tina Ntulo, an over 2-decade practicing psychologist currently working with Strong Minds Uganda, graced us with her presence and shared insights on suicide and its prevention. Do join hands with us and let's be part of the solution. This month is suicide awareness, suicide prevention. Prevention of suicide awareness month?
Suicide prevention and awareness.
Suicide prevention and awareness month. The last time we tried to talk, you're like, it's now a month? Yes, now we'll take the whole month to raise awareness on suicides. Maybe to figure out ways how we can prevent the rates that keep going up. So paint for us a picture. Or maybe before we get into the painting of the picture of what someone's mind going through suicidal moments looks like, help us understand suicide. From the context, I think from culture context as a taboo and all those things.
Yeah, it is a difficult topic because for many people it's inconceivable that a person will want to take their own life. Yeah, it's like, how do you start thinking about it? Where do you start thinking about it? What courage do you get to actually do it? So, and because death is already an uncomfortable topic, adding on the fact that a person can actually choose to end their own life kind of makes it hard. And so it becomes a taboo. And there's also the taboo that people think that if we talk about it, it will encourage people even more to actually do the task. It's kind of related to those other taboo topics that we don't talk about because we think if we hush them under the carpet, it means
they'll
people
go away.
Them, for example, early age sex, you know?
Yeah.
So contrary to popular belief, talking about suicide actually prevents suicide. It doesn't encourage suicide to happen. And talking about it in the right way, you know, where we are getting people who are experiencing these thoughts and feelings to understand that they have been acknowledged and heard for feeling them and having them, but there is help. And that is the most important thing, is that acknowledge but lead towards help. And lead towards help in a manner that makes the person not feel guilty or like a criminal, which is what our old mental act used to do. It criminalized suicide. And I really am grateful for, you know, the late Dr. Chigozi, the late Dr. Ndiana Banji, and the work we did towards repealing that act, because we were able to get that out of the statement and even the penal code. And now suicide is viewed as an illness.
Yeah.
And it's important for people to understand that. It's also uncomfortable because of our religious beliefs around death and the afterlife. It's uncomfortable, just because many people don't understand how people do it. But people do commit suicide. And some people are successful and some people are not. And those who are not successful have a higher chance of repeating the act in the first 90 days of the first one.
Yeah.
So it's important that these conversations are had, so that if somebody within your close circle is struggling and chooses suicide as an option, if they're unsuccessful, you're able to provide the support that they need so that they can not recommit suicide, try again to end their own life. That said, suicide is complex because the decision to end your life can be can take a year of thinking, and it can be a split-second decision. Yeah, for different people. So let's talk about the first one. The first one, where a person will contemplate it over a period of time, will normally be people who already have an underlying mental health problem. So people who are suffering from major depressive disorder, complex, or even normal, not simple, normal PTSD, people with schizophrenia, bipolar, will all contemplate suicide at some point in time in their mental illness. They might do it once, they might do it twice. It might be something that they live with. Even people with severe anxiety will think about ending their lives, only because the mental anguish of these illnesses is so painful and difficult, and at some point in time you just want it to stop. You want the sadness to stop. You're tired of having these panic attacks, and you're at that point where you're like, life would be good without them. If you have schizophrenia, the voices are literally telling you you're better off dead, kill yourself. If you're manic or in depression, if you have bipolar, you can commit suicide in both phases, by the way. So people with that's why we say people with mental health problems are more vulnerable to committing suicide. They have a higher chance that they will try and will be successful when they commit suicide. The remaining people who commit suicide are the ones who have the split-second decision. My girlfriend's just broken up with me. My world has come to an end. I go through tunnel vision, literally. Tunnel vision, where you cannot see your life without this boy or girl in your life, or spouse or whatever, and at that time you make a split-second decision, and it's unfortunate when that person is successful, because they might not have had an underlying mental disorder, but their ability to problem solve leads them to tunnel vision processes, and they don't see any way out of their situation. So we've seen this, for example, with people who are in debt, people who have gone and gambled. And you'll read this in the paper. The person went to the debt gambling place, put 5 million there, hoped that he would make some money, or she would make some money. It didn't come through. How do I go back to my boss or wife or mother or father and say that I've lost the money? You just go jump off the building. Split-second decision. Split-second decision. And the danger with those people is that because it's such a split-second decision, there's almost no time to intervene. There are no telltale signs. There are no warning signs. This person just acts so fast, and in that split decision, and also the other thing about them is that most of them choose very effective methods.
Where so there's no turn back at all.
There's no turning back, and which is sad. And so when we are trying to differentiate between the two, let's just talk about the people who take split decisions. You can't say, how do I start solving split decisions now? It's really about, how do I start bringing up people, children, adults, working on improving conflict resolution, understanding that your life will never revolve around a single human being ever in your life. Nobody is your oxygen. It doesn't matter how we sing it. Nobody is your oxygen. And life can go on after the disappointment of a relationship, the loss of a job, your goods being stolen, or any other thing. Life can go on, and many people, because we learn to identify ourselves 100% with these things in our lives, when they are no longer there, we kind of lose who we are, and then we're going to. But when you find people who are grounded in themselves, who understand that things can get better, unfortunate events are just unfortunate events. They pass. I'll feel bad for a while. I'll pick myself up. It's okay. And you're in that situation where you're constantly being affirmed. You have a good support system. It is unlikely that you'll ever make a split decision to commit suicide. Yeah. So that's that. So it's important that when we're talking about suicide, we have to have both in mind. So not everybody who commits suicide will have an underlying mental disorder, but they might have problems with problem solving and thinking rationally through the things that they are going through. And when they go through that tunnel vision of, oh my gosh, this has happened, I don't know what to do, and the first decision is, I have to die, or I'm going to kill myself. When they implement, they are almost always successful.
It's powerful how you've driven it towards conflict resolution.
I had never come to a place of thinking about it like that. For me, it was always a moment of, oh my goodness, this person didn't find a reason that would ground them and convince them to stay.
Exactly.
Because now for me, when I had, now this is the very first time I'm bringing it up, when I had this moment, it's not, the pain was too much to a point that, did I just disappear and my body was just present? I was just looking. And then what I say helped me in that moment was, I thought about the after effects of my passing on. I started looking through the people that are going to experience my death. And the one who was at the forefront was my mother. And man, like, who are like twins. We are tight like this. So I was like, I'm going to leave her? She won't, this will be too much for her. And then much as I was in so much pain, I was like, I need to stay for her. Which some people are very much against because they don't want to guilt trip the sufferers. But then for me in that moment, when I hear news about successful, when I hear successful suicide cases, I feel sad. I feel like, oh my goodness, this person had no one to fall back on. That is extremely lonely. And now for a certain period, I was taking those suicide cases personally. I was like, I wish I knew them. I should have been there for them. Like, I should have given them reason, maybe, but you can't help, you can't be there for everyone. So I sort of came to terms with that. I was like, oh, that's just sad.
Yeah.
So I just keep telling people, learn how to be there for someone. And it's very important, because I think I started saying this last year, that let the world break your child, but don't be a part of that world. Because when the world breaks them, they will not have anything to fall back on.
Exactly. And it also, I mean, there's so much we can say about, both. And there's some there's a school of thought that says even that person who made a split decision may have had an underlying mental disorder, but we do not know because they're not around to tell us whether they had depression or whether they were struggling with hearing voices or whatever it is that was going on in their lives. And that tunnel vision is that it's literally like driving through a tunnel, and the only solution at the end of that tunnel is that I'm going to be dead. So the avoidance of that is in the way we deal with conflicts, in the way we deal with people who make mistakes, in the way we help people go through loss. We've just talked about grief in the previous session. In the way we deal with grief and loss, in the way we are accommodating and offer grace for people who mess up and who carry out mistakes, because when you actually read the news, these are the stories we are hearing. The child failed P7, the family made fun of her, she went and killed herself. The young man went to the betting pool, he betted his school fees, he lost it. How am I going to tell my parent that I don't have school fees? He went and committed suicide. The other story was of the guy who did the same thing. He was like, I've been given money to go and pay some goods. They haven't paid me in a while. Let me go bet, make some money, get my cut, then go buy the goods. Then you lose the money. Like, how do I go back to my boss? My family is at home hungry. Walks to the top of the building and jumps off. At that point in time, there is no space for grace in that person's life to err. There is no grace in that person's life to mistake. You are in a relationship with a person where you can't separate yourself from them. You are enmeshed in we call it enmeshed. You're literally like living as though you're one person. So when they cheat on you, when they disappoint you, when you can't, in your mind, you can't see how they could have.
It's like you're going through a cessation.
They are human.
Sudan and South Sudan.
I know. They're human.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
bound to make mistakes, and so are you. So those are the things that go through that person's mind who has tunnel vision. The person who is depressed will contemplate suicide for a longer time. It will start with their idea of that. It will start with a fantasizing of death, a preoccupation of death. And it might always start with what happens if I am dead, and that will take place for some time, and then it will morph into what if I actually died? How would I die? Can I be in control of how I die? And then as the illness gets worse, they will then now begin to plan their death. Then they will literally execute in terms of getting the things together, and doesn't always happen. Sometimes they'll even start saying bye to people. Doesn't always happen, but some of them do, and that's when people are like, oops, warning sign. But some people don't pick it up. They'll start saying bye to people. They'll start talking about themselves as though they no longer exist. They'll start giving away their stuff.
What is that like? Help us understand. How does someone get to talk about themselves as if they don't exist?
Yeah, they'll tell you, when I'm no longer here, do this with my car. In case I'm no longer here, you guys don't know whether I'll be here. Things like that. Like, in the near future, I will be absent. And people are like, stop being funny. What do you mean? You rubbish it. But this person is literally hinting that, you guys, I am on my way out. And then now they will implement, and they may be successful or they might not be successful. The thing about this one is, because there are stages between when they start deciding to the actual implementation, if we are able to read the telltale signs, we can prevent it. But it's also important for people who've lost people to suicide is that sometimes you will not know. Sometimes they mask it so well. Sometimes the plan is so hidden that even your best investigator would have never picked it up. And especially when a person is really determined to go, they will go. So what can you do at the beginning to sort this out? This is where now open conversations about people struggling and mental illness is important.
Yeah.
And making sure that we are providing space for not exercising these taboos and the things we say. When you hear somebody has passed away by suicide on the news or on the radio, what statements are you making around the dinner table or at the office, water fount about that particular incident? Are you going, Shah, how dare they? These people are going to hell, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
If the person standing next to you has those thoughts, they're not going to tell you.
Ouch.
Yeah, but if you're like, oh my goodness, this is, like you said, this is very sad. I wish I was there for them. I wish mental health services were available everywhere so people could talk about these things. Then there's a high chance that if this person standing next to you is thinking about it, they found a safe space. If you're ridiculing, this person was weak, this person, is not courageous, this is just, then the person who's listening on this end who will be having these feelings won't come to you and say, by the way, that's what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
They would actually do a better job at masking their joy and masking their sadness and pretending to be happy. And this is why people say, Banange, we were here the other day drinking. We were here the other day morning. In the morning they worked. They'll be telling you, I do not understand how this happened, because it looked like everything was normal.
Yeah.
So suicide prevention starts by helping us, one, understand that people will have these feelings. Just like, I think the other episode when we talked about what is depression, mental illnesses, they are illnesses. They have classic symptoms. They have a set of symptoms. They've got a diagnosis, just like you have malaria, diabetes, arthritis, and the doctor quizzes you and asks you, what is this? And have you thought this? What else is going on? They are actually going through an algorithm in their mind to determine what you're sick of. It's the same thing with the mental illnesses. So once we can understand that mental illnesses do exist, and it is nobody's fault for having one, and these mental illnesses for most people might include the symptom of suicide ideation. You have ideation, meaning you think about it.
Yeah.
You then have to, if you're a caregiver, you have to always keep that in mind, that if a person who has arthritis can have a bad day,
Yeah.
regardless of what steroids they're taking, that day their bones will ache. If a person who has HIV might have a cough and get AIDS for like 3 weeks, and then you'll treat that and then go back to, you know, zero status or whatever. If a person who has asthma, you know, can have an attack regardless of how well you're doing the fruits and the vegetables and whatever concoctions, and they have the inhaler. A person who has a mental illness might go through a phase when they are contemplating their death. It's part of being ill. And we, or people who care for people, have to be open. And it's amazing because when I'm working with my clients, I just say to them, you know, it's time for me to ask the question. Because they know I will ask, and it's part of our contract. I will check, I will ask. Are you having these thoughts? Are you having fantasies about your death? What's going on? And it's important that they check in. And they say to me, yes, it's been happening. No, it's not happening. It's not happening. This week it hasn't happened, or it has happened. And if it has, then we talk about it. And we create that space. And it's a daily check-in. I mean, not a daily, but it's a session check-in. It's part of my session checklist that we talk about it, as long as it's something that you have vocalized to me. So we have to normalize that conversation. Just like the way we are now talking about people using condoms to prevent STIs and HIV, is the same way we have to normalize the fact that mental health issues exist, and part of those mental health issues includes the fact that there are people who will choose to, who will want to, or have feelings towards wanting to end their life. And if we can normalize that conversation, we make it easier for them to verbalize it, so that we can then support them to do it.
You've spoken a lot about caregivers and the people around the sufferers. I'm going to keep calling them sufferers because of the pain.
Because of the pain.
That precedes the action or the decision. What do we have for the person going through this phase? What is it? What is that something that can help them?
I think listening, probing, and asking the right questions. The decision to take your life is so personal that almost always people will not talk about it. They will not say it, because in that pain they're in at that time, they actually want their life to end. So in talking about it, in opening up to another person, there's a chance that they are warning you little enough not to be shocked when it happens.
Not to be shocked.
But not enough to stop them from doing it.
Or they don't give you everything.
Unless you're a really safe space. And there's some people who've come and said, oh my goodness, I'm so depressed, blah, blah, blah. I feel like dying. At that point in time, whoever is caring, But that time it's still a death fantasy, But when people start actually planning, most of them are very secretive about it. And this is why we have to probe, and we have to ask, and we have to be aware of the fact that if you're living with a person with a mental illness, or if you have a mental illness, that these thoughts will be there. So now let's talk about you who's going through these thoughts. It's important for you to find a safe person to talk to about it and say, guys, this is what's been going on. I have been feeling like this. I am finding myself aging towards this darkness of death, and I am now beginning, and people tell you that they crave it, literally. And this, by the way, if you're listening, please make sure you're over 18, because this can be disturbing for some people. People will tell you that I actually craved it. I looked forward to it. I longed for it. I have a client who survived suicide, but lived 3 months of his life as though he was dead. They buried, he was just a walking zombie. So according to him, they buried him. He fantasized his funeral that day. He fantasized his giving away of his, and he just existed in auto mode for about 3 months until he showed up for therapy.
Whoa.
And dragged in by his wife. And she was like, man, sort this guy out for me, please. And so we started having these conversations. But all that time he was in auto mode. He's like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm dead.
Oh.
And this is why people who commit suicide have a high likelihood, if they're unsuccessful, to repeat in the first 90 days.
In the first 90
In
days.
the first days after an unsuccessful event. So I'll say to people who are going through these feelings, one is that a professional therapist should understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
In that,
yeah,
when you
yeah.
speak the words, they should be able to affirm them and say, yes, I know what you're going through. It makes sense between your circumstances or your feelings. Makes sense. You're not what you're going through, because it's an illness, right? So if you had malaria, you can't tell your head stop paining and tell your joint aches, I command thee now to stop aching me. You have to take the artemisia. You got what I mean? It doesn't matter how much you talk to it, sweet talk it, beg it, I don't care. The headache will hurt for as long as you haven't taken the Panadol. The running stomach will happen for as long as you haven't taken the artemisia or the chloroquine or the quinine or whatever it is that you're going to use. And it's the same thing with mental illnesses. You cannot talk them away. You can do talk therapy, but of course, because it's treatment, you can't wish them away. You can't wish suicide away.
Command them.
You sit down and talk to a professional and begin to discuss why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Get to the root cause, sort the root cause out, and then come up with strategies to enable you that when these emotions come back, what do you do about them? So there's something that we call safety planning. That's the first thing we do.
Safety planning.
Yeah. When a person calls into me and they says, I have suicide ideation, the first thing we're going to do is the assessment, and then we'll do a safety plan. And the safety plan includes what are the things that trigger you, what feelings do you identify with when you immediately go to this place of wanting to kill yourself, and then after that, what are we going to do to distract you when you have those feelings? Because I will not be there. I will not, because I don't live with my clients, right?
Yes,
I won't be there. This will
yes.
happen in your day. It will happen in the night. It will happen as you're going around your own business. So what can you do to distract you? And people will choose what they can do. Everybody's different and they'll pick things. But things have been like taking a walk, listening to music, leaving the house and going to talk to people, watching something, anything to distract you from these thoughts, right? And then we also normally include in that plan a go-to person. Who are the first 3 people you can call, that when you're feeling like this, that you can pick up the phone, call these people, and we then train those people on how to support you when you're in that place. So it's important that once you've named the people, we then create a safe space, and we're like, please, when this happens, don't be alarmed. That's the first thing. Don't go, no. Don't be alarmed. Be calm. Then have a conversation. And the conversation is, okay, tell me what's going on. Why are you feeling like, why do you think you're feeling like this? What's happened to trigger this? And with mental illness, sometimes there is no trigger. That's another important thing to understand. There might be no trigger, no known trigger. You might not be able to put a finger at it. And then with that person who you have, who's your emergency contact, you then implement the plans. Okay, what do we need to do together to help you get out of this thing? And then if it's not happening, then I escort you to see the therapist so that we can talk about now you're getting treatment. We do the safety planning, we identify a support system, and then like if you're at Strong Minds, if you're one of our clients at Strong Minds, you will then be assigned a person who will then call in every, I think, 48 hours or something like that to just check on you and see that you're okay, and to make sure that your emergency contact, can support you to go through this. We also and then, of course, if the suicide score is high, we will refer you. Of course, now we need you to get a full psychiatric assessment, because there might be other underlying mental health problems going on that might necessitate for you to either take treatment or, and so we'll do that, and then they start working together. The therapists and the psychiatrists start working together towards helping you and the caregiver. Of course, the 3 people are important: the therapist, the psychiatrist, and the caregiver, and you. The 4 of you then work together to implement a care plan that can get you out of this situation.
So when you were speaking, I went back, it's like 2014, I think, when all this was happening to me. When I survived that episode, I got scared. I think, I don't know, of the world, I was no longer as confident as I was. Not confident in physicality, but even for my own security. Because what happened in that moment was there came a threat about Al-Shabaab targeting you. And all of a sudden because I love my space, I was staying alone. But then I got scared. I could no longer stay asleep or peaceful in my own room. I always imagined Al-Shabaab are going to knock on my door any minute. But that wasn't me before. I could see maybe a car going to get into me, and I just like, calm down. It's going to pass, or it won't knock you. But then in this moment, I was always in a crisis, you know? And again, people don't know anything about this. This is how I ended up choosing to have a roommate in my last year of campus. Now, I think people that really know me are going to be surprised, because now they imagined that the person that I moved in with is the one who asked me. And they kept asking her, how much did you pay her to accept? And I was just laughing it off, but no one knew.
That was your coping mechanism.
Yeah. And it felt safer, because I think what made me realize that I had to be around people, when I had that hurtful and grave moment with myself, I started going out to people. I was no longer with myself, because every time I was with myself, I was asking myself questions I didn't have answers to. So when I would be out and laughing about stuff, it was a whole different story. And I think that's when I came to this moment of, okay, I think I need to change my environment. I don't know how crazy this would be, but I moved to actually a completely different environment. I left the hostel and I was with someone in the room.
Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense. And I think for people who suffer suicide ideation, that is, people who have thoughts of suicide, this is confusing, because on one hand, there's a part of you that wants to die. And there's a part of you that wants to be in control of how you die. And then there's another part of you that's absolutely scared of death. And these coexist at the same time in your system. And people will find now they start going through like heightened anxiety, panic attacks, hypervigilance, and your mind is now just overplaying every form of danger you can think of. And this is why getting help is important, because sometimes the two in conflict, the second one will win, because it will be like, now let me do this to end this suffering. And so it's a weird place to be, and even for the person who's suffering, it's confusing, because why do I want to die, but why am I so afraid at the same time? And this is why it's an illness, and this is why you have to talk to a professional. Not everybody will think like you and say, okay, this is how I'm going to snap out of it. I'm going to get a roommate. I'm going to stay with people. Because again, if you're having depression, or you're having, let's say you're having depression, you will not want to be with people. Just the energy of dragging yourself to people is so much that the fact that you stay in your room means that these thoughts will continue to fester, and the next thing you know, you'll be acting on them. People with schizophrenia, of course, now it is a totally different thing going on. For them, it is them battling voices that are actually telling them that they need to end their lives. Or it is them being so overwhelmed by their hallucinations, whether they are auditory, or those are the things that they hear that other people don't hear, or the things that they see visual that other people don't see, or the tactile, sensations that they're having that are not there, and that is so overwhelming. And at that time, when you do not know what's going on with you, it makes sense to end your life, because you're so overwhelmed by these things that are happening. And if you don't get treatment, then it makes perfect sense. It's like you can understand why a person makes that decision. And I'm explaining this in detail for the person who is going through it. And then there's of course the person who's got bipolar and mania, and for them, even just that space of manic euphoria can be so heightened that you choose to end your life at that point. And so I'm hoping that if you're going through any of these things and you're listening to me right now, this is your cue to going, oh, okay, somebody has acknowledged that I am actually feeling these things.
Yeah.
Now I'm asking you to go get treatment, go get help, because they will overpower you at some point in time.
That's right.
Just like if you have, again, we're talking about malaria. If you have too much parasite in your system, it will overpower your organs. If you have too much insulin in your system or non-insulin in your system, it will mess up with your organs. You will eventually die. And so it's important that if you're going through these sensations, if these feelings, these emotions, and you're struggling with them, they are not okay to have. It's just like it is not okay to have diabetes that is not treated. It is not okay to have hypertension that's not treated, because you stop thriving, you stop functioning, you stop being the best person you are, who we want to celebrate. You know what I mean? We want you as your best self. We want to see your impact on this world. We want you to live your purpose. So get help. Walk to a mental health professional and say, I'm struggling, this is what's happening. If you have suicide ideation, pick up the phone, dial *252#, choose option 10, because suicide is an emergency. As soon as you choose option 10 and you finish the registration process, there will be a number that says, if you have an emergency, call. This number is available every day, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Call. Somebody is going to pick up. Even if you call right now, somebody is going to pick up that phone, and then they will help you, and will then organize the rest of the support after that. So, So I think it's in moving forward on this conversation, it's really around, for those of us who do not suffer these things, let's be careful about what we say about them. Because we are the people who either allow people to access care or deny people from accessing care by our words and our actions. So let's be more sensitive. Don't laugh when you see a person has jumped off the roof and go ha ha ha, look at this weak human being. When somebody posts on social media and says, I feel like dying, don't go, hey, go and kill yourself. You know, be sensitive. Be sensitive about the fact that this is a person who's really struggling and trying to reach out. And then look out for the signs. Look out for the signs. Just because you don't have them doesn't mean another person doesn't. The same way we are trying to prevent COVID is the same way we should be trying to prevent suicide. With the same level of intensity. And then for those who live with people who have mental health problems, again, open space. Do not be afraid to ask. Asking doesn't mean the person will go and do it. Asking means you're there for them, to have a safe space, to be able to say, I'm struggling right now, help me book an appointment for help. Help me find out whether our therapist can see me earlier because this is a tough week. Help me get through these next 2-3 days. Help me distract myself so that I do not go deeper into depression. And sometimes that help includes hiding things, removing the knives, removing the ropes, don't be afraid, because what you want is, what you're doing is preserving life. So if you're caring for a person, don't be shy to ask. It is okay to ask that question. It's uncomfortable at the beginning, but after some time, it becomes part of your daily kabozi. And if you're able to create a safe space that is non-judgmental, this person will tell you. Today is a bad day. You won't have to ask. They will come and tell you, man, it's rough nowadays. I'm struggling, I'm not sleeping anymore, the drugs are not working that I'm taking, I need to see the therapist, I need help. Because you're a safe space, you're non-judgmental. And then lastly, for the person who's going through, just pick up the phone and call, and we shall help you.
You've spoken about the things that people say and how they make the situation worse. I tried to open up about suicide. I don't know how many years ago it could have been, maybe 2018. I talked to someone, and then she was like, such people, I think I was raising awareness, actually. I got moments of writing those snippets on WhatsApp statuses, how short those characters get. So this person was like, those people are just ungrateful. And then I told her, you can't say that.
Exactly.
You can't say they are ungrateful. Because now for me, much as I didn't go with it or even attempt, it's just the moment that happened. I very much understand what it is like for that person in that moment. And then she was like, well, don't you see that for you? You thought about your mother. Those people are ungrateful. We are there for them. But then, like, no, it's not about you.
Thank you. It is never about you.
Like when you make it about yourself, the person even feels worse.
Exactly.
Because they feel like they start feeling guilty about the turmoil happening in their system. They feel like you're doing everything that you can.
Yeah.
And they're still not finding help.
Yeah.
Before you know it, they actually want to go through with what they're doing.
Because once I've labeled myself a failure, then what's the point of being around?
Ouch.
Yeah. Once I can't, and therefore that's why it's really important what we say. And believe me, if you don't have anything good to say, just keep quiet. Let's just see you in the corner of the room. Just be quiet. Try even not to nod or move your head. Just be silent. If you don't understand what's going on, just be silent. Your silence is better than actually making the wrong statement. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, because even for us as practitioners, you have to go beyond just reading the textbook to journeying with the client and understanding their life and empathizing meaning seeing things from their perspective, seeing things through their eyes. And when you're seeing things through their eyes, you're also putting in your mind, or in this understanding process, you're putting in their mind their context. Sympathy, pity is about me seeing you in my context. Oh, Nabuguzi, you lost your grandma. Me, I still have mine. You know what I mean? It's a pity you don't have one. That is me seeing things through my perspective. But me is going, oh my goodness, because you lost your grandma. What would it be like if I lost my grandma? How would I feel? Now that's empathy, because I'm now seeing things through your context, right? And it in as much as it is difficult, it's something we can no longer afford to run away from. Uganda is ranked number 6 on the continent on suicide. Just so that you know, which means we have a problem on our hands, but it's not a problem we can't solve. It is a problem that can be solved. It is an easy problem to solve, because all it takes is for us to be a bit more mindful, and to provide care.
Right. You've talked about starting to see these things from another person's perspective. Now let's go to the person next to the sufferer. They find out that this person has suicidal thoughts, or they actually survived the suicide when they attempted. They didn't go through with it. Can we talk on how this person is affected?
Very much, yeah. I mean, the first thing that would happen is that you will feel guilty. You feel guilty. You'll feel like what your friends said. You'll feel like they're ungrateful, because you're looking at things from your perspective. I've done everything for this person. Why have they chosen this route? So you'll feel taken for granted. You'll feel like you haven't done enough. You'll feel like it's your fault, which it isn't, but you feel like it is your fault. And all of these feelings are normal, but they are not correct. You should not feel guilty, because you cannot feel guilty for a person getting arthritis or diabetes or malaria, or these things happen. So the same way, the mind falls sick. Every part of our brain that is linked to a certain set of emotions has the ability to fall sick. It has the ability to fall sick. Just like every part of your body can fall sick. Your eyes can fall sick, your ears can fall sick, your lungs can fall sick, your legs can fall sick, your bones can fall sick. The brain is the same. Its physical brain can fall sick, its mental faculties can also fall sick. So it happens. Bad things happen to good people, So this is not your fault. You didn't cause this. In as much as we say socially there are things that could have led to, and that's a discussion for another day, but one is that you should not berate yourself. 2, the best thing you can do for your person is get them help. Professional mental health care. Before you even look for anything else, go for professional mental health care. If you're going to your pastor, make sure he has studied some mental health. If you're going to the Osenga, make sure she has studied some mental health. If they haven't, look for a professional. Because if you had an accident and your leg was bleeding, you're not now going to go to the shrine. You're
Right.
going to run to the doctor so they stitch it.
Mm.
Yeah. So look for a professional to help you.
That's right.
Don't play around with the delicacies, the delicate nature of suicide. And then once you get professional help, get help for yourself as well.
From yourself.
Get help for yourself as well. Caregiving is not easy. It is hard. It is confusing for many people. It is draining emotionally.
It is.
Yeah. And many times caregivers do not invest in their own care. In their own care.
I believe they don't really get to acknowledge how this manifests or reflects back to them.
And how much it impacts on them. Yeah. So get help for yourself as well. Find a person who, again, is professional enough or who understands, and so that you can talk to them. A safe space where you can vent, where you can talk about it, where you can get professional advice that's going to help you care better.
Yeah.
And avoid places where people will say things that are not going to build you up to make you a better caregiver.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It is not your fault. This business of, hey, the other things are of your clan. Sacrifice where, even tie this herb on your doorstep. I don't know. That's all just get away from all of that talk. Just find a professional, find care for your loved one, find care for yourself. Finding care for yourself will help you care for your loved one better.
Perfect.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I remember when we used to run mental health clinics, there are many times we used to look at the patient and the caregiver, and sometimes we wouldn't know who to treat. You just look at it like, who do we treat? Because the impact of this illness has affected this person so much that now they both look ill.
Right.
Yeah, it used to happen a lot when we used to run clinics. And so now you would then say, okay, you take the patient here, you take the caregiver there, and you do 2 different consultations. And this person gets the help, then you bring them together and you do some education to help them understanding how their behaviors are impacting on each other, and then you follow up on both. And that used to happen a lot when we used to run mental health camps. Yeah, it is not easy.
It's important how you've brought this up, how you've opened us to this fact that I think we never get to acknowledge. So for me, this is you acknowledging that both the patient and the carer can actually access *252# and choose option 10 to seek help.
Yeah.
Maybe your person is seeking help somewhere else, but if you dial that code and find help, you are in a better position to help the other person.
Yeah.
It's like you pouring from an overflowing cup.
Exactly.
Actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And most caregivers do suffer from depression and anxiety anyway. Most. Seek help.
Seek help.
Yeah. They suffer from the depression of lost dreams, lost ambitions, the financial constraint of caring, the being misunderstood, the being blamed, the guilt feelings. All of those weigh you down. Yeah, and you might end up with depression, but you're functioning because you have to take care of this sick person.
Yeah.
You're not allowing yourself to actually go through the depression because you now have a caregiver role.
Yeah.
And therefore now seeking help for yourself makes you support your person better.
It's important.
And it's also the same if a person, you might also be caring not for a person who's got a mental illness.
You brought it
HIV,
out. That's what I wanted to say.
Any type of caregiving can really weigh on a person.
There was a moment when my brother, the firstborn, that guy got sick on us, man.
Yeah.
This is a strong person. We had never seen him ill. We've never seen him down. He wasn't responding to any medication. I went in a moment of, you know what, God, I'm ready. And then I went back to campus, and this chick was like, what have you been doing? You've lost weight? And I didn't even notice. And she's like, what exercises? What is it? And in my head, I'm like, oh,
if only
is
you knew
that
the
serious?
problems I have been through. Exactly.
It's so powerful. Thank you. Hey,
Yeah.
how many times do I have to thank you? Now let me change.
No, I'm really grateful for this space, Nabuguzi, and it's good to get the word out there. It's good to let people know that, one, it's important for me for people to understand, and it will be uncomfortable for some people listening because they're like, oh my goodness, why is she going into that much detail? But it's important for that person on the other side of this conversation to be able to identify themselves. Or if you're caring for a person, you can then go, no wonder so and so is behaving like this. Let me help them get help, you know. And that's important. And then secondly, once we have more people seeking help, it then shows our government that we need to step up on how we deliver these services, how we make them accessible. It helps us as clinicians up our game because now we have to, you know, do more better. It helps us understand how, as Ugandan, mental health affects us, which might be different from our neighbors in Kenya and Tanzania, or even just as Africans, how is mental health in Africa different from, you know. So these things are important, but mostly it's about making sure that every person has the opportunity to live a life that they can enjoy and they can thrive and they reach their full potential. Everybody is important. We do not want to leave anybody behind. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Asanteni. Asante sana.
Get to the root cause of the problem. This is my takeaway from this episode. For many of the things that challenge us, oftentimes when we get to the root cause, the challenge is easier to solve. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Hashtag with Nabuguzi Kiwanuka. If you loved what you heard, make sure you subscribe to Hashtag with Nabuguzi Kiwanuka in your podcast platform of choice and share it with your friends. They need the virtual space. They need the information shared here. Also, feel free to share your insights about what connected with you on social media and be sure to tag us. We are at Hashtag with Nabuguzi Kiwanuka on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter, our handle is at HTNK Podcast. You can also reach us on our email, htkpodcast@gmail.com. Your reviews are welcome. I really look forward to hearing from you. Until then, catch you in the next episode. Ciao.